It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 17. How to define your relationship with money to better finance your acting career, with Jenn Lederer.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and on this podcast, we cover anything and everything about earning an income as an actor. Thanks for downloading this episode. This is episode 17, titled How to Define Your Relationship with Money to Better Finance Your Acting Career, with Jenn Lederer. The show notes for this episode have all the links referenced in today's show, which you can pull up right now at actingincome.com/episode 17. And just before we dive in, here's a word from today's sponsor, my book, Long-Form Improv. Here's one reader's review of my book, Long-Form Improv. I recently adopted Ben Hauck's Long-Form Improv for my intensive summer course at Yale. My job was much easier than in previous summers because my students read, understood, and loved Hauck's book. They performed the tightest heralds I've seen from beginning students, and that after only 5.5 weeks of daily instruction. I would definitely adopt Long-Form Improv as a textbook again. If you like how that sounds, pick up a copy of my book, Long-Form Improv, at Barnes & Noble stores, download it for Kindle or Nook, or order it now from actingincome.com/LFI. You're listening to the Acting Income Podcast. And if you didn't guess it from the title, it's about acting and it's about money. And it's also about the balance needed in pursuing both. Now, whenever balance comes into the equation, there's almost always a mental component to it. How do I set up my brain and program my thinking so that I can open up a better potential than how my brain is set up now to do acting and make money? Well, that's where life coaches and career coaches can play a helpful role. My guest today on the Acting Income Podcast is both a life and career coach, and specifically, she focuses on working with every type of person who might see him or herself as a creative entrepreneur. Her name is Jenn Lederer. Jenn hasn't been a life and career coach her entire life and career. In fact, she's got quite an eclectic background of jobs that led her to some pretty profound perspectives on money and the relationships actors have with it. She's also seen how relationships with money can get in the way of actors. In today's interview, Jenn offers some better ways of relating to money to better finance your acting career. Here are some juicy tidbits about Jenn. Jenn Lederer is a life and career coach for creative entrepreneurs. When she isn't traveling the globe for cool speaking events, Jenn's home base is New York City, where she works one-on-one with clients from all over the world, helping them build the life and career of their dreams. Jenn is also the writer and host of Weekly Alignment, a weekly web series that takes a satirical look at the world of entrepreneurship, self-help, and spirituality. And now, my interview with Jenn Lederer. Jenn Lederer, welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
The topic today is defining your relationship with money to better finance your acting career. And Jenn, you have a ton of job experience. You've done things from selling comedy tickets on the streets of New York to teaching dance to little kids to singing in a poodle skirt as a waitress.
Yes.
There's two jobs that you did that I think are particularly notable for this topic of defining your relationship with money to better finance your acting career. One is you were a weekend nanny for a particular celebrated person who's pretty famous in New York City and is currently running for president of the United States. And another job you did was you were a talent manager.
Yes.
Let's start with what you witnessed as a weekend nanny for this extraordinarily wealthy man. What can you tell me about that? What did you learn about money?
Okay, so, this was such an interesting opportunity for me because at the time when I took this job, I would say that my relationship with money was non-existent, meaning I just did not want to look at my situation at all. The only thing I was convinced of was if I had more of it, I would be happy. So then I got this opportunity to go see how really rich people live. I was like, yes, absolutely. The fact that I was nannying was kind of a side note to the fact that I got to explore this world that was so far from my reality. So I go into this like new environment, and the first thing that struck my attention was how often this guy would talk about his money. And that was like a really big trigger for me because I came from a background where you didn't talk about money, whether it was how much you were making or how little you were making, or if you were struggling or whatever, you just kind of didn't talk about it. And then if you did, it was usually some tension around it.
It was rude to talk about money.
It was rude. Or if you did talk about it, it was probably because you were fighting about it. So then I got to see this guy who was talking about it nonstop, and I realized, okay, so the fact that he's able to talk about it is something to note. But then I also realized, okay, the other side of the spectrum from where I was at with not wanting to look at it, never wanting to talk about it, the other side is always looking at it, always talking about it. And both spectrums were defining the person. So it was almost like the bank account, the number that was attached to the person was more important than the person themselves. And again, at the time, I had a really disconnected relationship with my money. So I didn't even really know what I was looking at. I just knew that I didn't like that version either. So that invited me to look at the realization that getting more money is not going to actually make me happier.
You saw that really, really high end, and you thought that's not going to actually be the salvation?
Yeah. So when I saw that, again, I was working for this very extreme personality, and he was the extreme of the other spectrum. But it was so good for me to see because I was like, okay, there has got to be a middle ground. And really, the money has to be neutralized. Like, that can't be the goal because you can get really lost, and all of a sudden, then that's the only thing that you think adds value to what you bring to the world. And that is just as trippy as believing that you don't have any value when you don't have any money in your bank account.
So you had a negative perspective of money, and then this person you worked for had this hyper positive perspective on money. But I guess in some respects, it sounds like you're talking about completely throwing out the idea of dollar amounts in money. Is that what you're talking about? Are we no longer thinking in terms of money, or are we thinking about it in a kind of neutral way?
Exactly. Thinking about it in a neutral way, meaning when I look at my bank account and I have $13 in it, that does not mean that I'm a terrible person, that I have no talent, that I have no value. When I look at my bank account and I have 13 million in it, it does not mean that I'm more important than anyone, that I have more power than anyone, or that I have more value than somebody. So being able to neutralize it, what that allows you to do is drop some of the triggers that come up around money. It's the reason why you don't want to look at the numbers. It's the reason why you don't want to talk about your debt. It's the reason why you don't want to talk about how much you're making versus how much one of your friends is making. It brings up all of these triggers. And when you neutralize it, it gives you this space where you can explore it without judgment.
So it's not rude to talk about money, nor is it self-affirming. I'm not sure what the other word would be about it.
You know, it's not the defining factor of who you are. And so many of our goals are rooted in money, are rooted in the belief system that I totally had, thinking if I had more of this green stuff, I will be happier. And I think that most people have that mindset until they get to the day when they have more money and they're still not happy.
When you started embracing this new mindset, what had happened to you emotionally?
Like I was saying about the triggers, I felt more relaxed about it. My ego settled down. I was allowing myself to reach out to a financial advisor and get advice, even though at the time when I did that, I didn't have a lot of money. And I was convinced that, like, what is a financial advisor going to tell me other than make more money, Jen? So, being able to kind of release the stories that I had around money so I could reach out and ask for help and get other people's perspective on it, that was a totally life-changing thing for me.
Now, you also worked as a talent manager for some time, and you were in the privileged position of handling not just actors' paychecks, but probably also on occasion, I'm guessing, understanding their attitudes about money. What kinds of insights did you learn from actors and how they think about money when you were working as a talent manager?
Okay, so the first thing that I noticed in most actors was there's this tension between being an artist and being a sellout. So people would worry of, if I do this thing just for money, am I a sellout? Or if I do this project that doesn't pay me what I'm worth, am I not honoring my creative side? And again, neutralizing, take the money aspect out of it for a second. Is this project going to light you up in another way, somehow? Because it can't just be about the bottom line. And at the same time, not freaking out when you get a paycheck that, your commission is taken out, Uncle Sam has done his job and taken that out, and the number is usually way smaller than the number that was on your contract.
Yeah, you might have a contract for $1,000 and your check is, when it's all said and done, $500, or maybe even less than that, I imagine in some cases.
Yes. So again, with this idea of letting the money define who you are or define how talented you are, I used to tell actors all the time, listen, you're never going to get paid what you're worth because everybody is priceless. So at that point, it really comes down to what is your relationship with where you feel you are energetically with money. What is going to feel aligned for you? There was a time when getting $100 a day for a project was totally aligned for you. There was a time when doing it for free was aligned. And there's going to be a time when the 7-figure paychecks really feel aligned for you.
Help me understand what that means, aligned in this case. Is it that you have a specific goal in your career and the compensation helps you achieve that goal? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean something else?
No, I really am talking about it in a sense of the story that you have with money. There's a story in you that says, I'm not worthy of making $100,000 in a week. If that contract gets put down in front of you, $100,000 for this week, and you're not ready for that, chances are you will sabotage it in some way, or you won't actually enjoy it because the whole time you're going to be saying, how did I get this? I don't deserve this. Someone's going to take it away from me. People are going to judge me. I'm selling out. So that's what I mean when you're not in alignment. At the same point, when you move past, when you just know that working for $100 a day is not serving you, it's not that the $100 a day is a bad deal. It's just not the deal for you anymore.
It sounds as if we're talking about money and we're talking about self-worth, and your self-worth is independent of your money. However, there's a tendency for a lot of people to tie their self-worth to their money. So if they only have $13 in their bank account, in some way, they're a horrible person. Or if they have negative amount in their bank account, there's some horrible person. But if they have $1 million in their account, there's some fantastic person. You're saying that it's independent of that you might be a fantastic person and still have $13 in your account, and you might be the richest presidential candidate out there and still be, maybe not so great of a person.
Exactly.
That's great to hear. Now, in interacting with actors, you saw probably some of the not so great relationships actors had with money. Do you have some examples of really good relationships you saw actors had with money?
Mm-hmm. The actors that really were able to detach their emotions from the fact that they were running a business. There's so many frustrations around how much money has to be put into acting. The classes, the headshots, the training, the collaborations, now all of this self-production that's possible. It's expensive. I'm not gonna beat around the bush with that. It's expensive, but I would dare you to meet a business owner that could tell you it's not expensive to run any business. So the actors who were able to look at their investments as an investment for their career, for their soul, for their creativity, and understand that it's coming back to them, right? It might not come back to them this week, this month, this year, but it's coming back to them. So there was this sense of gratitude around being able to spend the money and invest in themselves. And it wasn't around, hey, Jen, I'm going to sign up for this class because this casting director is awesome. And the result was only around trying to get the attention of the casting director. That could be a bonus, but the investment in yourself and the bigger picture of why they wanted to do it was always the driving force. And do you see how that also kind of neutralizes the money factor? Like there's a bigger energy involved there.
I do see that, though I also have the sense of, gosh, $60 a pop to meet a casting director for 5 minutes. I want to just see it as something beyond that interaction, that I'm actually working toward meeting more and more people. But there is that sense of, gosh, I'm going to part with $60 of my money to see a casting director. How do I get beyond that? Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do. I'm going to bring it back to what is aligned for you. At some point in your career, that's just not going to be what you feel is the best use of your time, energy, and money. So you need to be okay with just not doing that. But then that challenges you to think outside the box. How else can you get people's attention? How creative can you get on social media? What kind of networking events are you going to? What is your network of close-knit friends and actors? What are they doing? What does that look like? So, for me, when I'm looking at what I'm going to invest in to learn from, who I want to meet, there are things that I used to do that when I revisit, like going to certain networking groups or paying to meet certain people, I don't do it anymore because it's not where I'm at. There are other people who still really benefit from those things. So it really comes down to what you think is worth your time, energy, and money.
I really like that answer. That actually resonates with me a lot. What makes me think of is, in my pursuit of art, when you add restrictions to what you're doing artistically, new choices are available to you. I think of this metaphor, and you were talking, a stress ball, or those little tubes of gel that you squeeze. If you squeeze it on one end, it's going to bulge on the other. That's restricting on one end to create something new on the other end. It just makes me think that if I shut off some of the things that I do artistically, like maybe I spend $60 just for 5 minutes with a casting director. Maybe if I shut that option off, I'm going to develop new ways to meet casting people. As you said, like maybe I'll develop new networking methods, or maybe I'll do social media, or find other ways to captivate them. I like what you have to say. I also have to say something else too about this. You were talking about kind of basically how to invest in your career. Full disclosure, you were my manager for some time, and there was a time when we were working at 15%. The contract was 15%. Mm-hmm. And then one day you approached me and you said, you know what? I'm going to offer you this. I'll do 10% with you. I was a little surprised by that. I thought, why would you take less money? But I also saw this as an opportunity to say, you know what? No, keep the 15%. I want you to work at 15%. I saw that as an opportunity to incentivize you. I think many actors, I'm surprised a little bit, actually, when actors complain about the fees that their managers or their agents take. I see them differently, and maybe this is my relationship with money. I see that as compensation for their work, but also an incentive, and it just seems fair. So I wanted to keep it at 15. I didn't want to discount your services. That's my perspective. That's somehow I see money these days. Now, we may have covered this a little bit. How do you relate to money these days? For you, what is money? How does your attitude help or hinder your pursuits?
Okay, so at this point, I really truly feel that money is just energy. It's just like any law of attraction. What you focus on, you get more of. So I really focus on being grateful for whatever I have, whether it's the $150 that I'm carrying around in my wallet trying to stretch it through 2 weeks, or whether, it's a paycheck that comes in that was really helpful for, right now my dog is going through some medical stuff. So there's just so many opportunities that I know in the past I would have spent all of my extra time worrying, like freaking out. How am I going to pay this medical bill? How am I going to make this happen? How am I going to make this new launch? Whatever. And now I spend way more time being grateful for what I have. Every time I spend any money, I say thank you. And I say thank you because I know it's already coming back to me. That investment that I was talking about. And I'm serious, Ben, even when I buy coffee, when I buy anything from CVS, as the, long, 2 feet receipt is printing out, I say thank you. And it's interesting. A lot of people have a very parallel relationship to time, the story that they tell themselves. I never have enough of it. I need more of it. I wasted it. And, when you kind of release those stories and start to tell yourself, have you ever been running late? Let's say you're running late to an audition and you realize, okay, there's literally nothing I can do about this except I'm going to choose to not worry. And the whole time you just say to yourself, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. And somehow you get there. What's normally a 35-minute commute was magically 20 minutes and you get there. So your relationship to whatever is happening is more important than what's happening.
Your relationship to what is happening is more important than what is happening.
Your relationship to the $13 in your bank account is more important than the $13 in your bank account. That's where the power lives. That's how you can use this idea of law of attraction to make that $13 grow. Because I don't want people to think that I'm trying to say you should be happy with $13. I'm saying you should want as much money as you desire. But in order to get it, it starts with being grateful for whatever you have right now.
It starts there. But let's say it's a desperate situation. I can think of one example. Let's say I can't pay my union dues. So if I can't pay my union dues, I can't work union jobs. So then I can't earn an income and it takes several days to pay and I have my bills to pay. I imagine there's some people with the cynical attitude say gratitude's great, but I still have bills to pay and deadlines. How does this attitude help a person in that situation?
So again, your only real control in life is your reaction. That's the only thing we can control. So I don't know, if your dues are coming up and you know that you don't have what you're going to need, what you were talking about with having boundaries that create exploration and creativity, oh my goodness, I could shut down and keep this quiet and just freak out in my room and worry all weekend. Or I could open up, I could ask for help, I could start telling people, hey, how did you deal with this? Because you know what, I bet I'm not the only actor who's gone through this, and start to explore it and talk about it without judgment. I am willing to bet you'd come up with an answer.
Thanks for sharing that perspective. You have tons of other perspectives on other topics too. And I specifically came to you on this topic because you have a web series called Weekly Alignment in which you talk about money. So I wanted to bring you on. Tell me about Weekly Alignment, your web series. What is that about? What does it aim to do?
Weekly Alignment it takes a satirical look at the world of self-help and entrepreneurship and spirituality. The reason I did this, number one, it's, sarcasm and humor has been in my blood my entire life. My father is so sarcastic, and, I always say if you could get away from the dinner table without crying, you did a good job because, it was just biting humor, and I love that. I also think that sometimes these woo-woo ideas, like these concepts of law of attraction and gratitude and, not worrying about things, it can feel a little unrelatable sometimes for the people that are in the trenches. And I wanted to make it really relatable and simple. And I always tell people the ideas that I teach are simple, but they're not easy. It presents it in a way that allows you to kind of open your mind through laughter and relate to it in a different way.
Oh, yeah. You're sitting behind a desk with a microphone and you have these cut-ins over your shoulder. I like to call you the John Oliver of self-help.
I know you do, and I appreciate that so much.
Now, you're also a life coach and a career coach. What kind of services do you offer? You speak to creative entrepreneurs specifically.
I do. I work with creative entrepreneurs, which is kind of all encompassing. I work with directors, producers, writers, actors, jewelry designers, photographers, PR agents, anyone who can get into their creative side, I work with. I work one-on-one with people. I'm probably going to be offering some group stuff in the fall, but right now I do one-on-ones, and I also have a meditation program, and you can get a free meditation on jennlederer.com.
The link for that will be in the show notes.
And for anyone who's listening to this podcast, if you're interested in exploring working with me, I always do a complimentary session because, again, I'm all about alignment. If we're not right for each other for some reason, I'm not going to work with you. But if there's alignment there, then I want us to be able to explore that freely. If at that point you realize, absolutely, I want to move forward, you'll get 10% off it when you mention this podcast.
Well, that's a great offer for you to offer to the Acting Income Podcast listeners. Thank you for offering that. We are coming to a close, Jenn Lederer. Is there anything else that you want to share on defining your relationship with money, especially for those actors trying to finance their acting career?
Exploration is the key to success. When you stop saying this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, and you can neutralize it and say, this is a chance for me to explore it in a new way. You can actually approach it just like you meet a new character. You can explore a serial killer without judgment. Why can't you explore your money without judgment? You already have the tools, so learn how to use them in different ways.
Awesome. Again, where can people find you online if they want to find you?
My website is jennlederer.com, and then all of my social media is at Jenn Lederer.
And Weekly Alignment is also linkable from jennlederer.com?
It's on my website, and weeklyalignment.com will get you there as well.
Jenn Lederer, thanks for speaking to the Acting Income Podcast. It was great having you.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I had a blast.
Exploration is the key to success, says Jenn, meaning to shake off the positive and negative judgments you have about things, notably money. So let's explore some of the things Jenn talks about in the interview and what I gleaned from it. When it comes to your relationship with money, it doesn't matter whether you have $13 or $13 million. Your self-worth is not the same thing as your money. So if you're an actor struggling with money, stop putting your self-worth on your bank account number so that you can feel happy, never mind your bank account. What you do have, be grateful for it. When you spend your money, say thank you. For Jenn, money is energy, which I take to mean that it has the potential to return for you something of value when you spend it. Saying thank you is compensation for the valuable things you're getting in return when you spend your money, whether those things be now or at some unknowable point in the future. Now, it may be hard to say thank you as an actor and really mean it when you spend your money on, say, 5 minutes with a casting director, but that really depends on how aligned spending your money in that way is with your personal values. Maybe you're not that kind of actor right now. If paying to meet casting directors is not something you see value in, if it's not aligned with who you are, don't do it. We're not just talking paying to see casting directors, though. We're talking about how you spend your money in other ways as an actor. Do I buy this class, pay for this private coach, get this product, pay for this procedure? What such a restriction may do for you is open up new avenues, new choices, and essentially innovations and creativity to solve your acting problems, and hopefully leaving you happily spending your money on things you value and that align with you, rather than spending your money cynically on things you don't deep down value. Obviously, for Jenn, being around people who didn't talk about money and who flamboyantly talked about money led her to see that money says nothing about who you are as an actor or as a person. And when you're not racked by the trappings of tying your self-worth to your money, you free up your capabilities as an actor and as a human being to do more and focus on getting more. Money is neither good nor bad. It just is. One last thing. I haven't been afraid to look at my money. For the past 17 years, after every month, I classify everything I spent and everything I made, I tally it all up on a sheet of paper, and I know down to the penny just how I'm doing. I talked about this process back in episode 3 of the Acting Income Podcast. I called the process the secret of my success. And as a result, I've developed an intimate knowledge of my spending habits and how one spending choice I make will or won't really have an effect on my savings. As a free download, I offered in that episode my savings sheet. You can listen to episode 3 at actingincome.com/episode 3. And to get my savings sheet, just go to actingincome.com/savings sheet. Both of those links are also in the show notes for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've found this episode valuable. If you did, get in touch. I'd really love to hear from you. And that's the show. This episode was sponsored by the book Longform Improv by Ben Hauck. Order your copy today at actingincome.com/LFI. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode17, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. Rate and review this podcast on iTunes by visiting actingincome.com/iTunes. Pitch an episode idea by visiting actingincome.com/pitch. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode, check out actingincome.com/advertise. I'm Ben Hauck. Bye for now. And for more information, check out actingincome.com.